Good morning friends, hello, I am Anup sir. We are going to continue our chapter number 9, soil. In the previous lecture we studied about the soil profile. Now today we are going to discuss about the soil types. How many types of the soil, which is the type we have to see here. As you know, the weathering of the rocks produce the small particles of the various materials. These include the sand and clay. The relative amount of sand and clay depends upon the rock from which the particles were formed, that is the parent rocks. सैंड और क्ले किस पर डिपेंड कर रहे हैं कि द टाइप्स ऑफ द रॉक्स, उसके ऊपर ये डिपेंड कर रहा है. ओके, द मिक्सचर ऑफ द रॉक पार्टिकल्स एंड द ह्यूमस इज कॉल्ड द सोइल. विच इज कॉल्ड द सोइल? इट इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन. द मिक्सचर ऑफ रॉक पार्टिकल्स and the humus is called the soil. Then the soil profile or soil types is also depend on the types of the rocks and the humus. Okay, we have to see here living organisms such as bacteria, plant roots and the earthworms are also important parts of the soil. Which is the important parts of the soil? Bacteria, plant roots, earthworms are also important parts of the any soil. The soil is classified on the basis of the proportion of the particles of the various size. The soil contains greater the proportion of a big particles is called the sandy coils. जिसमें जो big particles होते हैं उसे क्या कहते हैं हम? Sandy coils बोलते हैं. क्या कहते हैं? Sandy coils. It is called sandy coils. The proportion of the fine particles is the relatively higher than it is called the clay soil. Okay, जो relatively higher होते हैं particles, fine particles, उसको बोलते हैं clay soil. The amount of the large and the fine particles about the same, then the soil is called the loamy. That is called the loamy soil. Generally we have to see here three types of the soil. First is sandy soil, second is clay soil, third is loamy soil. Which is called the sandy soil. The soil contain the greater proportion of big particles. Big particles का एक बड़ा proportion है, उसे called के उसको क्या कहते हैं? Sandy soil कहते हैं. If the proportion of the fine particles, उसमें greater particles थे, इसमें कैसे? Fine particles. That is fine particles is called the relatively higher is called the clay soil. The amount of the large and the fine particles about the same types के जो particles हैं उसको क्या कहते हैं? Loamy soil. Thus the soil can be classified as the sandy, clay and the loamy. Generally there are three types, mainly three types of the soil, which is sandy, clay and loamy soil. The size of the particles in the soil has an influence on the properties. Sand particles are quite large. They cannot fit close together the large spaces between them. These spaces are filled with air. We say that the sand as well as aerated water can drain quickly through the space between the sand particles. Okay, तो वाटर होल्डिंग कैपेसिटी किसकी ज़्यादा है? ठीक है, तो सैंडी. These are the filled with air. We say that the same as well as the isolated water can drain quickly. Water can drain quickly through the spaces. जो उसमें एयर स्पेसेस किस में होते हैं? सैंडी सॉइल में. तो वाटर को क्या करता है? क्विकली ड्रेन कर लेता है. ओके, बिटवीन द सेम पार्टिकल्स द सैंडी सॉइल्स टेंड टू बी लाइट, well the aerated and the rather dry. Clay particles being much smaller. Clay particles क्या होते हैं? Much smaller, pack the tightly together, leaving little space for air. तो इसमें जो clay soil होता है उसमें क्या एयर, soil में little space air होता है, और sandy soil में क्या होता है? जो एयर का स्पेस होता है वो क्या ज़्यादा होता है, तो जो वाटर को क्विकली ड्रेन कर लेता है. और जो क्ले सोइल है उसमें जो वाटर का स्पेस कम होता है. ठीक है, तो क्ले पार्टिकल्स बीइंग मच स्मॉलर पैक्ड टाइटली टुगेदर leaving little space of for air. Unlike sandy soil, water can be held in the tiny gaps between the particles of clay. So clay soils have less air. इसमें air less है. What? This provides the shelter for many living organisms such as the worm, rodents, moles, beetles. The roots of the small plants are embedded entirely in the top shells. Okay. They are the best top shells growing the plants is loam in loamy soils. So they are heavy, they hold more water than the sandy soils. तो सैंडी सॉइल से ज़्यादा होल्ड वाटर को कौन कर सकता है? तो क्ले सॉइल. द बेस्ट टॉप सेल्स ऑफ द ग्रोइंग प्लांट्स इज लॉम. दो टॉप सेल्स है जो प्लांट्स का सबसे अच्छा ग्रोथ कौन सी सॉइल में होता है, कौन सी सॉइल में होता है? विच इज द सॉइल टाइप हैव ए गुड ग्रोथ ऑफ द प्लांट्स और क्रॉप, that is the loamy soil. The best top soils of the growing plants is loam. Loamy soil is a mixture of the sand, clay and another type of the soil particles known as the silt. It is also type of the soil. Generally there are three types of the soil, which is sandy, clay and loamy, and the mixture of all type of the soil is called the silt. The silt occurs as a deposit in the river beds. The size of the silt's particles is between those of sand and clay. The loamy soil also has humus in it. It has the right water holding capacity for the growth of the plants. loamy soil है उसमें जो water holding capacity for plants है वो क्या बहुत अच्छी होती है. So it is a good for the growth of the plants. That is the activity. Collect the samples of the clay, loamy and the sandy soils. Take the fistful of soil from one of the samples. Remove any the pebbles, rocks or grass blades from it. Now add water drops by drop. Then knead the soil. Add just the enough water so that the wool. आप क्या करो, क्ले, सैंडी एंड लोमी सॉइल लो, ठीक है, उसमें क्या करो, वाटर डालो, तो उससे आपको पता पड़ेगा कि इसकी वाटर होल्डिंग कैपेसिटी अच्छी है. कैन वी मेड द फ्रॉम इट बट द सेम टाइम द शुड नॉट बी स्टिकली. ट्राई द मेक अ बॉल फ्रॉम द सॉइल ऑन द फ्लैट सरफेस. रोल द वॉल इनटू द सिलेंडर. ट्राई मेक ए ring from the cylinder. Repeat this activity. Can we suggest which type of the soil would be the best is making pots and toys and statues. तो आपको इससे ये भी पता पड़ेगा कि which type soil is very useful for the making pots, toys and the statues. Preparation of the soil we have to see here. You have listed the some uses of the soil. Let's perform some activities to find the characteristic of the soil. We have to see in the next lecture. If anybody have any query regarding the types of the soil, then ask me in comment box. Generally 3 types of the soil, which is the first is the sandy, second is clay and third one is loamy, and the combination of the sandy and clay soil is called the silt. It is the also type of the soil. Have a nice day.